A floating mushroom or a galactic table lamp are two things that Spacedock 1 might well resemble. But since its debut in The Search for Spock some 40 years ago, the Earth orbital docking structure has lived on in both live action and animated Star Trek. It has proved to be a versatile structure, with its design used across the Federation in various incarnations and reused footage. The original station itself has become almost as iconic a part of the franchise as its gorgeous array of starships, and is one of the most recognizable structures to exist in Star Trek. So recognizable, in fact, that it would be brought back recently for Picard's final season. Shuffling across the stars with a little help for some warp tugs, it serves now as the Fleet Museum at 8th and Prime, housing legendary starships from all eras, including a classic Constitution class. This standard home base for much of the Star Trek cinematic adventures, this list will not only focus on its exterior, but also the interior, as well as its legacy across the generations, both live action and animated. Engage the autopilot, sit back, and let the Dockmaster take control as we explore what's aboard, and not just in Hangar 12. I'm Sean Ferrick for TrekCulture, and here are 10 secrets about Spacedock 1 you need to know. Number 10. A matter of perspective. The live-action appearances of Spacedock are, for the most part, reusage of footage from Star Trek 3. The approach of the Enterprise and the entrance through the gigantic space doors instantly became iconic. It's suggested that the doors and the enclosed bay are designed in such a way as to allow work crews to operate in the vacuum, yet still be protected from prolonged radiation exposure without the need of enclosed spacecraft such as the travel pods or tugs. In Star Trek VI, the audience is shown the first appearance of the executive shuttle and future kit bash into the USS Jenolan. It is also the only time in the franchise that Spacedock is viewed from a ventral angle. This was a conscious decision from the effects team to find a different way to look at the base, providing a better look at the underside of the station surfaces, as well as that smaller hub where the Enterprise D would be resurrected in the 25th century. One thing that you won't find on Spacedock, but was part of the original concept, was a designation similar to those you would find on a starship. In the case of Spacedock 1, in the original artwork for The Search for Spock, it was labelled as NC7011S, though this never made it to screen.
Looking for a VPN? Well, we've got a great deal from Nord. Get 73% off and 3 months extra free. Just click the link in the description down below.
Number 9. Digital distinctions. The design for the Spacedock station was seen outside of live-action Star Trek, with its most significant appearance in the 3rd season of Lower Decks. Douglas Station was the launch site for the Texas-class automated craft sponsored by Vice Admiral Les Buenamigo. This offered a rare chance to see the Spacedock type utilize its defense systems as it combated the rogue ships, although these phaser turrets proved fairly ineffectual against the drone Starfleet prototypes. Douglas Station was also used as the launch site for the USS Cerritos in Mariner's Crisis Point rewritten holodeck adventure. The introductory scene of the Cerritos in that movie pastiche has all the trademarks of the motion picture combined with the aesthetic of the blue-hued Spacedock interior as per Star Trek 3. Douglas Station was also the final destination for the Generation ship in Moist Vessel, as well as the site for repairs following the incident with the Packlet clump ships in No Small Parts. In fact, Lower Decks has also allowed fans inside the living space in the structure and the offices of its top brass, something never done in the movies. Size suggests that this version is more in line with the original Spacedock 1 design than the upscaled edition used for its various Next Generation episode appearances. Number 8. Ship shapes in shot. Over the course of its live-action appearances, we have seen 7 starships inside the Spacedock structures. There were 3 types of Enterprise with the refit, A and D. The Excelsior was shown in Star Trek 3, along with an unnamed Miranda-class ship in The Voyage Home, and that reuse of the Planet of the Titans concept hidden in the background. According to graphics later sold at auction, which were used in the Spacedock scenes, this Miranda class might be the USS Intrepid. Eagle-eyed viewers can spot an Oberth class ship present as the crew is transported to the Enterprise A for the first time at the end of the voyage home. The registry on the craft is NCC 640, the USS Copernicus. The Oberth class model would next appear as the SS Tsiolkovsky in the Next Generation's The Naked Now. As the model was shown from a distance in said episode, with no close-ups, at least in 1987, nothing was changed. It's fair to say that no one expected a remaster to follow in the years to come. As for smaller craft, two types are utilised inside Spacedock. One is the travel pod, first used in the motion picture to transport Kirk and Scotty to the refitted USS Enterprise, and the second is termed as an orbital shuttle and in some cases a Starfleet tug. It would be seen in the third, fourth and fifth movies with reused footage featuring it in the first season of The Next Generation. Number 7. A different class. Sovereign, Nebula, Constitution all evoke images of starship classes, and the same goes for space stations. Memory Beta simply refers to this one as a Spacedock type, while several fan sites suggest it belongs to the Ornal class. This is never mentioned on screen and in official materials, aside from the Eaglemoss Starships collection. There is no mention of this designation for this type of space structure. Even the graphics used to detail the ships of the museum fleet state it as a Spacedock type. Furthermore, attempting to get a definition for the word Ornal also seems to be difficult, with everything defaulting to journal. Maybe the J just fell off. The first reference to it as this class seems to appear back in Eric Jackal Christiansen's Starfleet reference manual, Ships of the Fleet Volume 2 from 1993. Fan association Starfleet International uses this as a class designation for its chapters choosing the design as their fictional base, such as the UK's Spacedock Birmingham. In-universe, these locations are only ever referred to as Spacedocks. Some beta canon sources list an Ornal 2 class station large enough for the Enterprise D to dock through the main doors, which could include Starbase 47 and accounts for the identical design. Number 6. Afterlife. The search for Spock is the only time that the extensive central dock and the 20-foot wall section would be used, as both were destroyed after filming wrap. This meant that for the unveiling of the Enterprise A in the voyage home, as well as shots in the undiscovered country, a new and less intricate interior was built. That recreated interior would also be used for the sequence in which Spacedock is shown losing power when approached by the whale probe in the voyage home. The control room area was still in existence for that later sequence, composited with new shots of the interior. Star Trek V would rely purely on reusing existing footage for the sequences in Spacedock. The scale miniature of the exterior would return for Star Trek 3, 4 and 6, as well as the Next Generation. The sequences filmed for 1100-1001 would be the only ones created for that series that would then be reused for all future encounters. That first season episode of The Next Generation would also include a new docking port that would be reused for one other episode. This was a side-shot matte painting, was created by Enterprise D designer Andrew Probert, and then augmented with tiny people walking across the gangway for scale. Its second appearance would come in Season 4's Remember Me, this time as the docking port at Starbase 133, though this was all archive footage. Number 5. Big and Blue. As the USS Enterprise stops inside the vast hall of Spacedock 1, it passes by a series of large windows and a lounge. All rise and watch as the patched up and scarred starship arrives at the base. Keep an eye out for Grace Lee Whitney among the crowd. This lounge would then house that janitor, complete with mop and bucket, who gets to witness that same Enterprise reversing toward the very closed space doors. At the time, the only way to create that effect was to use the world's largest blue screen, which was housed at ILM's Marin County headquarters. In one of those ironic franchise twists, it was also the same blue screen that was used for the speeder bike and Jabba's sail barge sequences in some other sci-fi sequel called Return of the Jedi, I think? Some 40 extras were drafted in for the arrival of the Enterprise, while additional height and scale was added to the set through the inclusion of a matte painting to the top and sides. The interior wall model of Spacedock and the USS Enterprise were then composited into that shot. The cafeteria was contained within the central structure, and fans can also spot part of the Excelsior docked just to the left of the screen. In a near homage to the docking shots in The Search for Spock, A smaller control room was featured in 11001001, with the Enterprise D docking through the windows in the background. This would also mirror the Enterprise D's theft by the Binars, where the ship is seen reversing out past the same windows again. Number 4. A second lease of life. Athen Prime, the early 25th century, and what better place to line up a series of classic starships than at a classic starbase? The familiar shape of Spacedock 1 loomed up on the view screen during the third and final season of Picard. Its outer shell had now been supplemented with a series of rings, in which famed vessels from yesteryear were housed for display. In Vox, it's suggested that not only is the Enterprise D stored here in the secretive Hangar 12, but that the Enterprise E may be at least nearby as well. Viewers know that it wasn't an option for combating the Borg, but the throwaway line that it wasn't an option teases a possibility that there's one other Enterprise parked at the museum waiting for Geordi's engineering expertise. Hangar 12 is in the lower structure of Spacedock rather than the large mushroom section, thus neatly solving the issue of scale presented by Starbase 74. Production designer for Picard, Dave Blass, revealed that James Chung was responsible for the basic design work on the CG version of Spacedock, which, combined with several existing models for reference materials, the team created a light wave model, then refined it down to what was seen on screen. Blass also said that Spacedock was towed to its new location by warp tugs, possibly by the Wallenberg class seen around Mars during Picard's first season and part of the Romulan evacuation fleet. The decision to use the structure from the movies came down to Terry Matalas's love of the design, and the fact that it was such an iconic piece of classic Star Trek fitting with the collection it housed. Number 3. State of the interior. For 2 of Star Trek III's most memorable sequences, the script required interior shots of Spacedock featuring the Enterprise and the Excelsior. The models weren't made so that the interior and the 2 ships were all on scale. In fact, all the shots of the 8-foot Enterprise and brand new 10-foot Excelsior involved compositing images together to get the scale right. They did build a section of the interior measuring some 20 feet across, with the exterior model measuring in at 6 feet from top to bottom. The central docking structure was one element, while the curved wall of the vast bay was the second. The magazine for the Eaglemoss special goes into detail about this, noting that the exterior wall was covered in photocopies of the patterning to save time and money. It would only ever be seen from a distance, and no one in 1983 had ever considered the possibility of 4K. The beams of light firing up into the docking chamber were created by Fresnel lamps placed outside. The production team also needed fans to stop the photocopied interior detail from getting too warm and peeling due to those very same lamps. To create an even more unique look, a faint smoke haze was used with multiple takes overlaid to create the desired atmosphere and enhance the lighting beams. The model was also reversible, so that if you walked outside, it represented the exterior of Spacedock complete with motorized doors. The big win here was that more detailed shots could be filmed that could not be achieved on the smaller 6-foot miniature. Number 2. Other uses. Besides turning up in 4 motion pictures, the Spacedock model was also used during the years of the Next Generation. It appeared as Starbase 74 in 11001001, Starbase 133 in Remember Me, and Laia Station Alpha in Ensign Row. Its final appearance in The Next Generation would come in Season 7's Phantasms as Starbase 84, where the Enterprise D would receive its problematic new warp core. All of these reuses of the footage shot for 11001001 with tweaks dependent on the planet and location. The latter 2 appearances of the Spacedock type base did not include any interior shots. But its legacy doesn't just stop in live-action Star Trek, as Lower Decks has resurrected the familiar design for Douglas Station. The initial appearances in The Next Generation were jarring for Enterprise D designer Andrew Probert due to the huge shift in scale. The sequel series showed the vast Galaxy-class vessel slipping through the doors to the cavernous interior. Probert had suggested that given the relative scale of the original design, the Enterprise D should dock at the edge of the mushroom head rather than enter the structure. This wasn't used with the large starship navigating inside, even though Probert indicated it could have attached via a dorsal transfer umbilicals incorporated into the original Galaxy-class design. Number 1. Substantial spatial superstructure. Starbase 1 made its first appearance in Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. It served as the new base, replacing the orbital dry dock that had been seen in both previous films. At a size of 3 miles in diameter, Spacedock could house a variety of starships up to and including the Excelsior class, as well as the odd concept model docked just in the corner to fill a space. It would be the first in a line of stations designed to dwarf the hero ships of the franchise, and was imagined by future generations director David Carson and Nilo Rodis-Jamero. The concept from Carson was to make the station look massive rather than the Enterprise look small, and his way to achieve this, according to the Eaglemoss Starships collection, was to include interior windows. He was inspired by watching planes arrive at Los Angeles Airport. This helped to replace the original plan to dock the Enterprise externally. That 3-mile diameter also, when it first appeared, made this the largest space-bound Starfleet structure to have graced the screen. Adding to that scale, the original model was filled with neon tubes and then had its external plating layer etched with hundreds of holes to give the impression of tiny windows across its surface. This in turn meant that Spacedock had to be cooled with compressed air while being filmed to keep the heat down. Though, in terms of size, it has since been surpassed by stations such as Starbase 74 and Yorktown from Star Trek Beyond, Spacedock 1 remains one of the earliest, most striking examples of Starfleet design evidenced by its enduring use. That's everything for our list today, folks. Thank you so much, and thank you very much Clive Burrell, who wrote the article that this is based on. You can check that out over on whatculture.com. I have been Sean, and you have been wonderful. Please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. It makes a massive difference when you do. Please follow us on the various socials. We are at TrekCulture or at TrekCultureYT. I am at Sean Ferrick on those socials as well. Thank you so much to the wonderful Pedro who edited this video. You know you are wonderful. Everyone, until I see you again, make sure that you live long and prosper. Look after yourselves, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others. Put some love out into the world because I think we need it right now. To our friends in Congo, Sudan, and Palestine, stay strong. We love you, and we are only hoping for all of the violence to end. Thank you so much, everyone. You are wonderful.